Welcome to, this is the sixth time that we've gotten together. Wow. I must, I guess, do a little apology ahead of time just because that's me. I am not feeling well at all tonight, so we may not be here for 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 the whole time. So let's see. We'll just see kind of how it goes. Uh, so I think we should probably start with both Dancing Fool and this. Let me see. Let me make sure I hear it too loud. I'm actually going somewhere with this too. Zappa and Batman. Yeah, two people you don't get to see together very often. All right, nice song. Okay. All right, so what we have on for tonight, we'll review a little bit on what we did with the counting and all of that kind of stuff with the rhythms. And then I just want to check the homework and just make sure that everybody was cool with it. It should have been fairly easy, and hopefully nobody got stuck in it, but we'll go over it. And then I want to review intervals because what's coming tonight is really polyphony and chords and that kind of stuff. So that's what's in store for tonight. And it's really bothering me that I can't see. There we are. Okay. All right. So I wanted to review the rhythms with you guys, especially when it came to counting simple time signatures, which is what we did the most of, but we didn't get to count too much in the compound time signatures, and I kind of wanted to touch on that just because there's a definite advantage with one of the counting systems in counting in compound time. So most of what we did and what we've done at least in class has been pretty much in simple time signatures. And just to review, your simple time signatures are basically things that are divisible by twos, and that can be so. The other time signatures that basically we'll just put whatever number the numerator or the denominator, got it right, the numerator is, and whatever number on the bottom, if it's a 2 or a 4 or an 8 or a 16, so most of the time these are going to be, or a 3 is also in there. Whoops, not the 3, sorry. 2, 4, 6, 8, and 2, 4, 8, 16. Look at me. It's going to be a great evening. So really, it's going to be the division of the beat that's going to be telling you whether it's a simple time signature. You kind of have to watch the ones that are from here on, because those could be very well placed under what we call compound time signatures. So your compound time signatures, and we did kind of talk about them the last time. They are mostly starting with, like, say for instance 3/8 or 6/8, 9/8, 12/8, and so on. And that's usually because even though the bottom number is a number that's divisible by 2, the problem with these is that they're usually grouped and flagged. The groups of eighth notes are usually grouped and barred by 3s. So anytime that you kind of see this in a time signature, like for instance in a time signature of 6/8, you'll see them barred like this. All right, if it was 9/8, you would just see 3 more. And what the bars really represent is how it is that they want you to group them. So they want you to group them. This would be beat 1, this would be beat 2, this would be beat 3. So rather than counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you would actually follow the pulse of that time signature. It counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So when you're actually conducting in this time signature for yourself, you would be conducting in 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you would be subdividing, instead of subdividing it by 2s or by 4s, you would actually be subdividing it by 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So there's a definite advantage here to count these using the Eastman system. And the reason is, under the number system, whenever you count tuplets, the way that the number system usually asks you to count triplets is to actually say triplet. So that measure would be counted triplet, 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 which is, I guess it's okay, but it doesn't let you know where you are within the measure. So that's a bit of a con with that counting system. Under the Eastman system, you would use the number of the beat followed by a la and followed by le. So that measure up here would be 1 la le, 2 la le, 3 la le, 1 la le, 2 la le, 3 la le. So that becomes a little bit better. So if you were in 12/8, you can apply the same thing and go 1 la le, 2 la le, 3 la le, 4 la le, 1 la le, 2 la le, 3 la le, 4 la le. You see? So it becomes easier to actually count it that way. You know where you are within the measure. And the other thing that's really important about this is to actually further subdivide that beat to the 16th notes. So if you were under the number system, and let's say that you had to actually count 6 16th notes here, this system doesn't really give you a good idea of how to do this. There's really no, I haven't heard that there's a better one. I might be wrong here. However, under the Eastman system, if you just do the same thing that we did when we were subdividing the 16th notes in simple time, and put a ta there, ta, ta, then it becomes easy. I'm going to put one more beat in here just because I don't like ending on the top. So if I go 1 ta le ta le ta 2, 1 ta la ta le ta 2, it's easy for you to find out where you are in the triplet. 1 la le 2, 1 la le 2, 1 ta la ta le ta 2, 1 ta la ta le ta 2. And all I'm doing is that I'm putting the time between, and it's subdividing it already. The subdivision is already in there by me putting a time between. This one's also a little bit of a tongue twister, so you kind of have to practice it a little bit. So slow it down. 1 ta la ta le ta 2, 1 ta la ta le ta 2, 1 ta la ta le ta 2. Take away the tas. 1 la le 2, 1 la le 2, 1 la le 2. Put in the ties. 1 ta la ta le ta 2, 1 ta la ta le ta 2, one ta la ta le ta two. And so you notice what I'm doing is that I'm accenting the la and the le, and so you still see it, and you're still keeping a good subdivision of the beat. One la le two, one ta la ta le ta two, one ta la ta le ta two. And that way, if you have a really, really complicated rhythm, like, let me just, this is way messy. Let me just kind of clear a bunch of these. So let's say that you had something like, something like this, and I'll just end it on beat 3 over here. And let's just say that this is 6/8. And so that makes that beat 1 of the next measure. Beat 1 of that measure will obviously be there. If you can see the way that they're barred, then that makes this beat 2. So now what I need to do is that I need to find the actual triplets in here. Well, the eighth notes are the ones that are being subdivided into the triplets here. So this is the first eighth note right here, but it's in half. So 2 16th notes equal 1 8th note. So that those two already take care of my 1. Here's my la. There's my le. And this one, notice that there's no 16th notes over here, so that makes this my la. And this one is actually part of the second system here, so there's no lay there. The lay happens here. And so what I have to do now is to go to the 16th notes that are in there and place a top in there. Now I have the right syllables that I can say. The important thing is for you to say them at the right time. That's the trick. And that's why this needs to be done slowly, and it needs to be done with a metronome at the beginning. Because if I were just going to read what I put on there, I could put 1 ta la ta le, 2 ta la ta le, 1. Or 1 ta la le, 2 la ta le. That's what it says. And if I'm going to play it like that, what it would sound like would be ta 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 ta. And in my mind, I would actually be pronouncing that, but what would come out would be garbage. Not really garbage, it would be pretty. I would make it sound as pretty as I could, but it would probably not be what the composer intended. So the first thing to do is to actually get in my mind, looking at the music and say, okay, well, where are the subdivisions of the beat? 1 la le, 2 la le, 1. No matter what, that needs to be played with integrity. Da 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 da. Now I need to decide it's beat 1 of the first system and the la of beat 2 in the second system. 1 ta la le, 2 la ta le, 1. 1 ta la le, 2 la ta le, 1. And that's a complicated rhythm to actually say it like that. So if I can't just say it like that to begin with, then I go from beat 1 to beat 2. 1 ta la le 2. 1 ta la le 2. And then I speed it up. 1 ta la le 2. 1 ta la le 2. Da da dum dum dum. Da da dum dum dum. 1 ta la le 2. 1 ta la le 2. Keeping in mind that I should still be going 1 la le 2. 1 la le 2. 1 ta la le 2, 1 ta la le 2, and then I isolate beat 2 and do the same thing. 2 la le 1, 2 la le 1, 2 la ta le 1, 2 la ta le 1, 2 la ta le 1, and then I speed it up as far as, you know, as fast as the music asks for. A trick is always, if you're actually working this out for a piece of music that you're working up, is to don't stop at the marked tempo marking for the piece. Always go about 10 clicks beyond. for two reasons. Your conductor may not have the same sense of time as your metronome. That was a very political statement there, but it's true. We get excited on on certain nights and we pick a faster tempo. You've never seen me do that. So if you're working out a piece of music, work it out just a little bit faster than what it should, and then back it off to the tempo mark, because nobody's perfect. So you should always go a little bit further and then work it back. Okay. And then the other thing is that really take your time working it up to speed. All right. I'm going to give you a little bit of an example. Let me see if I actually have it on my thing here. Do I actually have? There it is. I'm going to show you one of the etudes. This is not really an etude. It's a great piece of music actually by Georgescu, and it's called Legend for trumpet. This was written for trumpet and piano, but I just want to show you this because it kind of speaks to what it was that we were talking about. The kind of stuff that I showed you in those counting exercises was very, very simple. But now you can kind of see that this piece has a little bit more complexity to it, especially when it gets to here. So it's necessary for somebody, and that I don't know. Can you actually see this? Did I actually? Am I? You probably can't see that. There it is. All right, so I was actually pointing and doing all of the kind of stuff, and I didn't realize you can't see what I can see. So, so this piece of music, especially here where it says move it, is it's a little bit more complicated than the stuff that we saw in those counting exercises. And so if I'm going to perform this with a pianist, I need to have a really, really good idea of where the beats are, how it is that I can communicate with my accompanist, what it is that we're supposed to accomplish here, because it's really, really, really easy to get lost. Very, very easy to get lost here. And you're only talking about two musicians. And so one of us is lost, then there's really no safety in numbers here. Okay. So let me show you one thing before we get into how to actually attack all the little black notes here. Well, let's just take this measure right here. In order for me to keep integrity in that measure, I'm going to make this a lot larger so I can write on it. So this is my target measure. Let's just say that I'm having trouble coordinating this measure with the pianist. The first thing that I see that's going to be a problem is that I start with a rest. And that means that if I don't take my time and actually understand what's happening in the piano part, then I'm not going to be able to put this together with my pianist. So the first thing that I know that is going to happen is that in rehearsal we're going to have to coordinate that entrance really, really well. All right, but beyond that, probably most likely the next thing that I want to do is that I want to make sure to understand where the beats are in this measure. Now, if you notice, I didn't scroll up on the top of the page, and I didn't even recheck right now, but I will tell you that this is a 4/4 measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it isn't. It's a 6/4 measure. And the way that I could tell is that's one quarter note. 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 And that's another quarter note. So how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm gonna, if I was just looking at that measure, I would just look to see and to make sure that that's a 6/4 measure. So if I go up I'm gonna have to erase this, otherwise it's gonna get really confusing. But so let me go back and see and check. Ah, you see it right there? 6/4. See how smart we are? So, go back. So now that I figured that out, mind you, this doesn't take very long. I'm just going super slow because I kind of want to show you what it is that we do here. So this is beat 1. This is beat 2. This is beat 3. Here's beat 4. Here's beat 5. And here's beat 6. Okay? Everybody with me so far, yeah? All right, so now I need to decide, you know, I can mix and match my systems if I want to go my number system, if I want to go with Eastman. I'm just gonna leave it with one right now. Let's just say that I'm gonna choose an Eastman method. So this will be the te, and this gets a te. This gets 3. Ta, te, la, le, ta, 1. Okay? But I will tell you right now that if I just kind of read that, that's a mess, and I can tell you that I'm going to play that measure wrong. So the first thing that I should do is to actually take this measure apart and go with what the most uncomplicated thing is, and then really isolate the complicated part. So I'm going to go from the beginning of that measure to beat 3. And so that's all I'm going to do. And so I'll set my metronome, te 2, te 3, te 2, te 3, te 2, te 3, 1, te 2, te 3, te 2, te 3. So I recognize that in my body, with my body, I need to feel that beat 1, te 2, te 3. What I just did right now is that I took a breath on beat 1, but I know myself better. If I take a breath on that beat 1, I'm going to be late on the end. So I need to prepare and go breathe on probably beat 6 of the previous measure, and then just get an oomph in my chest. Te 2, te 3. So that's how I would practice doing that. Okay. The next thing would be to go from beat 3 to beat 4. So I'll go from there to there and just isolate that one beat. So if the beat is going here, I can ask my metronome to subdivide it for me, but I don't want to be lazy about this. So I know that the subdivision is going to be 16th notes. In other words, 4 per beat. 1 ta theta, 2 ta theta, 3 ta theta, 4 ta theta. So here, if I only had the 16th notes, I would go 3 ta theta 4, 3 ta theta 4, 3 ta theta 4. But I don't have all 4 16th notes. What am I missing? The last ta. 1 ta theta 4, 3 ta theta 4, 3 ta theta 4, 3 ta theta 4. And now I have another complication in that beat 4 is not articulated. Beat 4 is part of a tie. 1 ta te, 1 ta te, 1 ta te. So if you notice what I'm doing is with my breath, I'm emphasizing that there's a beat 4 because I don't want to just end it there. So I want to take the same time and I want to go back. Te 2, te 3 ta te 4. Te 2, te 3 ta te 4. Te 2, te 3 ta te. I should have said te e. Te 2, te 3 ta te. Te 2, te 3 ta te. Te 2, te 3 ta te. All right, and then I could speed that up if it's not much faster than this, but te 2, te 3 ta te. Te 2, te 3 ta te. And now, then what I do is that I just isolate beat 4. 4 la lay 5, 4 la lay 5, 4 la lay 5. And I know that that transition going between beat 3 and beat 5 is going to be trouble, so I can isolate that. 3 tate la lay 5, 3 tate la lay 5, 3 tate la lay 5. Do you see what I did? So I'm still communicating with myself and just kind of going, beat 4 is right there. 3 tate la lay 5, and as soon as I get done with the 3 tate, I start in my mind subdividing it into triplets. Da 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 da. 3 tate la lay 5. So then I go back to the beginning of that measure. Te 2 te 3 tate la lay 5. Te 2 te 3 tate la lay 5. Okay. And then all I have to do is just finish out the rest of the measure, which if I'm really, if I'm comfortable with understanding the subdivision of the dotted A16th, this shouldn't be a problem. However, I get to hear people a lot of times have trouble with this, and that's because a lot of us do, depending on the piece of music, whether it's going fast or slow, and depending on the style, we tend to play that figure differently. So we have to make sure that whenever you do put this with a metronome, that you're coming in exactly on the top. I'm gonna slow down. So that's the beat. 1, 2, and I can actually make it. Three, 4, 5, 6. 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I want this guy, will actually 1 te, 2 te, 3 te, te 2 te, 3 te, 4 te, 5 te, 6 te, te 2 te, 3 te, 4 te, 5 te, 6 te. See? So this guy is smart enough that if I ask it to, see, that's why these guys are better. Because now I can make sure that I'm on that 5 to 6 to 1. 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 Da, 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 da. And I want to line up that 16th note exactly with the metronome. That's that that's that that that's that that's that that that's that that. That's how precise I want to make that measure. And it's not because I want to impress the pianist. And the pianist will go, God, Robert, man, those were super subdivided. That was excellent subdivision. It's that if I'm going to interpret this piece of music, and if I want to give it my artistic impression, before I mess with it, I really want to make sure what the composer wanted. Not just out of respect, it wouldn't be his music or her music if I did something else to it. I kind of have to say, okay, well, this is what you wrote. Let me read what you wrote. I mean, nobody writes Shakespeare and changes the words around. Nobody acts the Shakespeare part and rewrites the words to it. That you just don't want to do that. You know, if you're gonna do that, then write your own damn piece of music. Don't play somebody else's. Okay. All right. So getting to beat 5 to 6 to 1. So now I need to finish out the rest of the measure. And when I go back, I kind of want to slow it down now, especially if I spend some time with the 5, just to make sure that the rhythm, that I'm playing that rhythm with integrity. Te 2 te 3 ta te 3 ta te la le 5 to 6 to 1. So one more time. Te 2 te 3 ta te la le 5 to 6 to 1. Te 2 te 3 ta te la le 5 to 6 to 1. And if I can do that 5 times out of 5 with the metronome to my satisfaction, then I get to move on to the next tempo. So that's how you actually just approach a piece of music that's a little bit more intricate than those little exercises that I have. Now I'm not going to do exactly the same thing with the rest of this, because I'll be spending the whole time on that. I just kind of wanted to show you the process just a little bit at a time, just so that you can understand from a conductor's perspective, when I ask you to actually figure out a piece of music or actually take it apart. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm expecting you to do. Okay? And if you have any trouble doing anything like that, then come and ask one of us. Those of us that had to suffer through college theory and all of that kind of stuff, we'll be able to show you how to do this. This is not, it's not like it's a secret that we're guarding, but it just needs to be done. It's kind of like washing dishes. You just have to do it. It's not the most pleasant thing in the world to do, but it needs to be done. All right, let me just kind of show you how to think of this measure right here, because it looks really, really complicated. And I'm not going to go through the same counting system that I did with the other one, because it would be ridiculous for me to do so. But let me just show you, because a lot of you guys are going to have music like this, and you're just going, I just can't count that. And if you're saying that you can't count that, you're right. There's no great way to count that. Not using the number system or the Eastman or the French or the Martian counting system. But one of the things that you should do is, at least in your mind, let me see, how do I move this thing out of the way? Just a second. At least in your mind, get this a little bit bigger, first of all. And so, because what you want to do is you really want to isolate that one measure. Will it give me a... So what I want to do is that I want to isolate this one measure right here, this measure that says précieux. Sorry, Jared, I just really made up. Never mind. So I want to isolate this whole measure right here and just look at it for a second, and then start taking my pencil to it and start messing with it. The first thing that I need to find is that I need to find where the hell the beat is. For one, I noticed in here that they just changed the time signature to 3/4. Okay, well that makes it nice. Now if I just kind of step back from that measure and I look, you'll see that the measure is actually divided into 3 big parts. There's one part right here. Here's another part right here. And here's another part right here, ending on beat 1 of the next measure. Those are my beats. And if you want to, you need to make sure you kind of have to go back and you have to count, well, how many flags do these have? That means that these are 64th notes. That means that there are going to be 4 of these notes into 1/16th note. Is that right? No, into 1/8th note. Sorry, 4 of these into 1/8th note. 2 of these in that. There are 2 64th notes in a 32nd note, 2 32nd notes in a 16th note, and 2 16th notes in an 8th note. So I have a 16th rest right here. How do I know that? Because it has 2 flags. Okay, and then I have the rest of the measure to go by. And also notice one thing. Notice the way that these tuplets are actually bracketed. Notice that the duration of all of these notes is exactly the same. They're all 32nd notes. This is my 8th note, is the first bar. Second bar is 16th note. Third bar is 32nd note. Okay? So this means that this is my downbeat, and this is going to start getting messy. Let me clean this up a little bit. That's why I like to use different colors. But this is my downbeat. This is my downbeat. And this is my downbeat. So they all get one down arrow. All right. What I also like to see is that if I can determine very quickly where the upbeats are, or where the te is, there's my upbeat, there's my upbeat, and there's my upbeat, and there's a downbeat here. Okay, so these are going to be the things that I'm actually shooting for. This is a downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, upbeat. So the first thing that I need to do is figure out that entrance, and I will tell you right now that that's probably going to be where I'm going to goof up. Because I need to really make sure that I go from here to here with integrity. If I don't do that, if that upbeat is not exactly where it needs to be, the rest of the measure is going to be off. So one of the first things that I might do is, let me take this off the table right now and start on the upbeat and do this part. Why? Because, first of all, because there's no rest to contend with. From the upbeat to the downbeat, I have 6 notes to play. So if I want to actually take this upbeat and divide the upbeat into 2, and at least for my work's sake, I put that note on a downbeat and this note on an upbeat, then I have 3 notes here, 3 notes here, and I have yet dum, dum, that luddy ludum, that luddy ludum, that luddy ludum, that luddy ludum, that's why I'm doing. It's just kind of speeding it up. But now instead of coming in on a downbeat, I have to come in on the upbeat, or and there it is. And so what I do is that I conduct myself just the same thing that I asked you guys to do before, and go up, down, up, down, up, down. Now I need to put 6 notes in there. Each one of those groups are 3. And then what I need to do is that I need to go back to the one when I'm satisfied that this is my upbeat. Then I have to go back and pick up those 3 notes and make sure that they're ending up on the upbeat. Okay? And if you actually want to read that, I did that probably faster than I should have. And I'm still, and you can kind of tell that in my voice is still a little unsure. If I was really sure, you would hear it in my voice, and if I was really sure, you would hear it in my horn. So let me go ahead and just do something real quick, and I'm not going to play this whole piece for you, but I do want to show you somebody that actually knows what they're doing, how it is that they actually make it sound with integrity and very musical. So if you'll just kind of put up with me for just a minute, and I know, I know what you're probably thinking. Oh, Robert, this is just trumpet music. That's not what I play. I understand that, but the method is the same regardless of the instrument that you play. It's down here, follow me. There it is. I'm going to go back one more. So watch here. Okay, so you might say, well, Robert, that it takes 20 minutes to work out one measure. In a piece like this, you're right. But the issue is though that you only do it once. If you do it right and you do the analytics, you actually analyze it well. You only have to go through those 20 minutes once. From then on, it's practicing, because you'll remember what that one measure was all about. You won't have to go through that system of discovery every single time. It'll be there the next time that you wake up to it. Okay. So other things that you can do is that you can take a piece like that, you can take a recording like that, and then you can take any kind of music software, like Cakewalk does it. I know Audacity does it. Many pieces of music, and many of them are cheap. A lot of music software out there will knock off tempo from a piece of music without adjusting the pitch. So you can actually take if Hakan Hardenberg, the guy, my hero when it comes to playing stuff like this, he's playing so fast, I can take an MP4 of that and put it at half speed, or even slower than that if I want to, and actually see and hear the guy that I want to emulate just actually playing it exactly the way that it should. So that's kind of cool. So I kind of wanted to head back to intervals, because we're getting ready to look at chords. And this is where it gets we can get to have a little bit of fun here. But we need to kind of revisit the concepts here, or some of the concepts here. Is that intervals, when we talk about intervals, it's really the relationship between two pitches. So not even though there are rhythmic intervals, but that's when we talk about intervals, most of the time we're just talking about pitch. And so the distance between one note and another note. And so it's always a group effort. And that means that everything in music, at least as far as pitch is concerned, everything is relative to either the pitch that we consider home, or a pitch or a home base that we might consider that being consonant, meaning that it sounds pleasant or comfortable or completion or relaxed, and that kind of stuff in terms of our own ear. And so our ear hears all of these things as kind of like a home base, something that's comfy, and we call those really consonant intervals. Everything else that falls outside of that, we call it dissonant intervals, because they tend to struggle and they kind of tend to fight. Both of these, by the way, are healthy. It's healthy to have consonance, and it's healthy to have dissonance. And one of the funny things about about my other life in Chinese medicine is that Chinese medicine is based on Taoist philosophy, not Taoism as a religion, but as a philosophy. And one of the best things that it actually teaches you in the theory of yin and yang is that there's always a push and pull, and our society is so ingrained sometimes as to saying that constriction and taking stuff away, or even death, is a bad thing. It isn't. Cellular death is a good thing, even in Western science. Cellular death is called apoptosis, by the way, when each cell is programmed to live a particular time and then die. A cell that doesn't die is a cancerous cell. This is what happens when cancer cells, when that gene expresses, then those cancer cells just multiply and multiply, and it's not the matter that they just kind of keep multiplying so much as they don't die. So it's healthy for a body to grow and to expand and contract. That's what your lungs do. That's what your heart does. That's what the universe does. It grows and it contracts, right? Music is the same way, and people receive it the same way. If you played music that was consonant all the time, it would be boring as hell. It would be kind of like the last couple of months for most of us. We've been at home the whole time. I like home, but it's just boring, right? So there's no tension. Everything's a release. You know, it's kind of like in college when we were 10. Well, if everything was a release, then you would be in a constant state of diarrhea. Everything's a release. You know, you can't do that. That's not natural. That's not good for you. It's not good for your ears. It's not good for your mind to actually just all the time just be in a consonant space. You kind of have to stretch it a little bit and actually get a little bit into dissonant. Now, one of the reasons why I played Zappa to begin with is because he understood that concept really, really, really well. And he took it to absurdity many times, and people just thought that the guy was weird, which he was, but it wasn't because of that. I think that he just kind of wanted to share and to show people how absurd sometimes our concepts of having to be one or the other all the time is. You know, you have to kind of have to stretch a bit. Somebody's trying to chat and I can't see the chat. So if it's something important that the whole group needs, please unmute and say it, because I lost the ability to do the chat thing. So, consonant and dissonant. But when it comes to musical terms, when we're talking about consonant intervals, we already talked about the ones that are called perfect. And it's the perfect prime, perfect fifth, and perfect fourth. In that order. The perfect prime is the most consonant, the second one is a perfect fifth, and the third one is a perfect fourth. There aren't any other perfectly consonant intervals. There are some that are still considered consonant, but are less than the perfect ones. And those are your major and minor thirds and fifths, thirds and sixths, sorry. And we'll talk about how to label all of these in just a second. So the thirds and sixths come close to the fifths and fourths and the primes. Everything else, at least in Western music, there are other types of world music that have different intervals. Not everybody divides an octave, for instance, is not always divided into 12s. Sometimes it's divided into 24. But we just don't do that in Western music, or not much. So everything else, other than the perfect ones and other than the thirds and sixths, in Western music are considered dissonant intervals. And so, as far as pitches are concerned, then those are going to be the pitches that are going to counterbalance the consonant ones. And so, for a piece to be balanced, you always need it's hardly ever is it 50-50. Sometimes just throwing a little bit of dissonance in the right spot just hits it right, and people understand it completely. That's what we'll see. We'll see a very old piece of music that still survives today. It's called La Folia de España, which it has lived for centuries because of that. It's a beautiful example of how to use dissonance to just kind of just ooch things by a little bit. Okay. Pardon me. I think that this is what happens when, for some reason, when I share my screen, I can't see the chat anymore. I think it's in my settings. Something's going on with my settings. Ah, I see it now. We will, by the way, for right now, we're going to get into different intervals, but for right now, the only intervals that I'm going to be concentrating on are the intervals within the octave. There are larger intervals, and we'll get into that when we get into jazz chords. But for right now, to just kind of keep it easy and keep it steady, we're just going to go from the prime to the octave. And if that's the case, then what I'm missing here, I'm missing the perfect octave up in the consonant ones. Okay. Okay. Let me do a little bit of something here and get let me get some staff paper. Okay. Let me share screen. Sorry guys, this for some reason this is taking me a little longer today than normal. All right, so here we are. I'm just gonna pick. Let me just pick the bass clef because I usually don't pick on the bass clef, and just to make us treble clefers get with the program here. That note, ladies and gentlemen, it's called a C. Okay. All right. So C, from C to C. That's a perfect prime. From C to C is an octave. So these two are the most consonant intervals that we have, and that octave interval is one of the most consonants that we have because if you go back to the way that nature presents sounds to us, that's the first overtone. The second overtone is a fifth. So if we go from there, that's a C. And that's a G. It's not a very pretty G, but it's a G. Trust me. Okay. The funny thing is that mathematically, this works out that the ratio is that, and in terms of frequencies. So an octave, it doubles the frequency, but the distance between the distance between a fifth, like if this was let me see, what would a good example be? What is it? If this was 6, this would be 9, something like that. It's actually expressed in mathematics a little bit better, and you math geeks, you can do this a lot better than I can. But these frequencies have to do with the way that your eardrum vibrates, and so if they follow these basic frequencies, and then these are considered consonant intervals. The other one that would be considered a consonant interval would be a fourth, the distance between a C and an F. And, you know, even though you're seeing those things in pictures, since we're not talking about pictures, the best way, the absolute best way to get to seeing what it is that I'm talking about is really to play it on a keyboard. And so if you have your keyboard with you, if you did, it would be a lot better if you can kind of follow along. If not, if you have a fretboard, you can do this with a fretboard as well. If you have your guitar or a bass or your viola, you can do this with a fretboard. But the best thing is, let's say that this is home bass. There, that's a C. Okay? So naturally the interval between C, that sounds pretty good. That sounds like the same note. And chat. All right. The second interval that's considered consonant is an octave. And if your piano's in tune, that should sound pretty good. To many people, that sounds like the same note. And even though we call them both C, they're not really. This note is twice as many frequencies as that one is. Okay? The third one is that one, which sounds kind of cool, actually. Kind of reminds you of, you know, Gregorian chant and that kind of stuff, right? Very, very old sounding interval. And so is this one. That's a fourth. Why does it sound kind of familiar? Because if I take, this is a C, this is an F, that's a fourth. But if I take an F and I make a C, that's a fifth. So an inverted fourth is an upward fifth, and vice versa. So I have one, that's a fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Got it? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's an F. But if I go 5 from here, 1, that distance is a fifth. You see? So those are all considered consonant intervals. Everything else, when I play C as my relative pitch, in other words, C as my home bass, a D is a second. That's considered dissonant. Another one that's considered dissonant is a seventh. That doesn't sound right. And those with the tritone are usually the worst. In other words, a minor second, this one, that doesn't sound so good. A tritone together, that doesn't sound so good. And a seventh doesn't sound so good, but it's not that it doesn't sound so good if you have somewhere to go. So if I'm using that note as a dissonance, it just kind of wants to go, in other words, it wants to lead somewhere. And so that's why that note and that distance is called a leading tone. And it's called a leading tone because I want to go, finish it! There. Do you see? It's a leading tone because just finishing it up there doesn't do it. Even this far away from that scale. I mean, I just did this, you know, a good long while ago, and you were still hearing that. Do you see? So it does have that effect, and whether you like it or not, that's how our brain, or at least that's what our brains have been trained into hearing. Now, that's not to say that somebody who was brought up in a culture who never actually heard our system of tonality I don't know what that would sound like to that person. I do have an idea what it sounds like to those of us who have actually grown up with this. So consonance and dissonance is something that we have to pay attention to. And as a wind player, it's really important to get to understanding which, where it is, where within the home base is that the note that you're playing. Is the note that I'm playing, is it supposed to cause dissonance? Is it supposed to cause tension or release? Because that is what tells you whether you're playing too loud, too soft, or whether your pitch is off. Because none of our instruments are built perfectly with, I think that some people's brass instruments go to 11. I know at least one flute player whose flute goes to 11, but that person is not an ACWE anymore. But anyway, so just kind of just knowing where it is that we are with that, especially as wind players, is really important. Okay, all right. So go remove this for a minute. And now let me switch gears over here. We'll put this in treble clef just for the sake of argument. And so let's call this still our home bass in C. From a C, if I was going to write a C major scale, no sharps and no flats, that's what it would look like. All right, so if I was just going to give them numbers, that's a 3, trust me. Okay, all right, so this would be a perfect prime, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, and a perfect octave. Okay, the rest of these guys, if I'm playing in the C scale, a D, relative to C, a D will be the major second. And a E will be the major third. And a 6 will be the major 6th. And a B will be the major 7th. Relative to C. In other words, if I'm finding that my home bass is C major. If I take the same home bass though, and I write that as a D flat, that is called a minor second with a little m. Or if I take the third and I flatten the third, that's a minor third. I'm going to skip the fourth and the fifth for just a minute. If I take a sixth and I lower it, that's a minor sixth. And if I take the seventh and I lower it, that's a minor seventh. Okay? So if I take a major interval and I move it down by a half step, you take a major and you move it down by a half step, that becomes a minor interval relative to home bass. Okay? If I take a perfect interval and I kick it down, this one becomes a really interesting one, because technically speaking, that if I did that to a fourth, that would be a diminished fourth. Diminished. I'm going to put that in here. If I do that to a fifth, that's a diminished fifth. The reason why I said that this is interesting here is because what happens with this note, it is the same as that one. So if you look at a keyboard, an F flat is the same note as an E natural on a keyboard. But in theory, theoretically speaking, if I take a fourth and I lower it by a half step, that is no longer a major third. It is not a major third, and it never was. It is a diminished fourth. This is why it's so hard to answer questions like these when people ask them in a different context. When people ask, is an F flat the same as an E natural? Well, no, it's not the same. But when you look at a keyboard, then you're going, yeah, it is. And when you look at your fingerings, and you go, yeah, it is. No, it isn't. and it's also it's correct to answer it. No, it isn't. When C is your home base, because everything right now is relative. All of these intervals that I'm saying are only relative if I'm talking about C as my home base. Why? Great question, Robert. Because if I'm going to keep this in treble clef just to make it consistent with this. Let's say that I'm going to be talking about, let's say that my home base is going to be a D. Okay? But I'm going to be talking about the same intervals, the same notes that I did for C. E, F, G, A, B, C, and D. So this is my perfect prime. This is my perfect octave. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay? All right, now keep in mind that D is your home base. Is this a D major scale? No. A D major scale would have two sharps. Which ones would they be? F sharp and C sharp, right? So if I took this scale and I went to the F over here and I added a sharp, and I went to the C and I made that a C sharp, I would be talking about a major scale. And then the intervals would be exactly the same as they are here, except that I would just move them up a notch to the D. But if D is my home base and I have no sharps and no flats, then this is still a major second because that's the same distance here. But this is not a major third. This, in fact, would be a minor third, little m. The fourth, it would be a G natural in the key of D major, right? So this would still be a perfect fourth, and this would still be a perfect fifth. I'm good with that. Would there be a B natural in the key of D major? Yes, there would be. So I can call that a major sixth. But that note should be sharp in the key of D major, and it isn't. It's flat by one. So I take that, which would otherwise have been a major seventh, and I call it a minor seventh. Do you see? So everything, all of these intervals are really relative to what is home base, and taking into account that a major scale is like the baseline for everything. Okay? So now this is how you call these intervals. Now, when you take any perfect interval and you lower it, we call that a diminished interval. When you take a major interval and you lower it, we call it a minor. And when you take a minor interval and you lower it, we also call it a diminished interval. In other words, when I take a C, well, let's just kind of take this C right here and lower it to a C. Let's say that I will take my perfect prime, and I'm going to lower that. that interval right there, this is not a very good example. Let me go back to, I'll tell you why it is that I'm avoiding that, but let me do that. Let me do this a little bit different. Let's go ahead and just take an F like that. That's a perfect fourth, right? If I take a perfect fourth and I lower it, that's a diminished fourth. Go back to my C, and if I take an E natural, that's a major third. If I lower it, it becomes a minor third. And if I lower it again, it becomes a diminished third, or a little circle, or actually a third like that. So perfect intervals go into diminished right away. Major intervals, you have to lower them twice to call them diminished. That's the rule. Okay? And that's important. And that's pretty much where it is that we stop about lowering them. There is another kind of alteration that we can do that's called augmentation. And that instead of actually going down for an interval, you would actually be going up for an interval. I'll show you that. Damn it. There. So let's take the bass clef again. And let's take a C. Trust me, that's a C. C. And let's say that I'm going to take a perfect octave like this. That's an octave, but well, actually not yet. God dang it! Come on, get it together, will you? This happened to me last week too. Long day. So C, that's a perfect octave. If I take that second C and I make it into a C sharp, that is an augmented octave. In other words, I've actually raised it. Okay? So if I raise it, it's called augmented or aug. And it's usually represented after the note. So like if I say we haven't gotten the chords yet, but if I say C, something like this, you'll see it in a chord, you'll see it like that, or something like that. And this is not that is not a computer term. You'd have to be really old to know what that means anyway. So, okay? Especially with the C++. All right. Go back to, and that gets us to not quite where I wanted to be, because I wanted to get to chords tonight, but we didn't. But that seems to be a good breaking spot. So what I want you to consider for the next time, and if you have access to a keyboard, it doesn't have to be a portable one. If you have a piano at home or something like that, start plunking this out like this. Consider, if you can see my hand, take your dominant, well, you can't do this. Take your right hand, whether it's your dominant hand or not, and label your fingers from your thumb to your pinky finger 1 through 5. So your thumb is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you take your fingers and you drape them over each white key without skipping one on the C. So if I did that and I just play them as a cluster, they'll come out like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got it? So what I want you to consider is playing only on the white keys. Play 1, 3, 5. This is what we're going to be talking about the next time. We're going to be talking about chords. So if I take those 3 and go 1, 3, 5, that's fine. Now move your thumb up to the D and still number your fingers the same way and go 1. Play those together and do the same thing. Move up to E. Do the same thing to the F. Whoop. Like that. And then do the same thing for the G. Do the same thing for the A. Do the same thing for the B. Ah! 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 Okay. All right, so that's our homework. Get to a keyboard if you can. If you don't have a keyboard, the only way that you can do this is by playing arpeggios. And an arpeggio is to actually skip every other note. Dee da dee da dee da dee da. So it would actually sound like. Okay? Those would be arpeggios. You would have to just kind of spell out the chord 1 3 5 3 1 3 5 3 1 3 5 3 1 3 5, because you can only play one note at a time unless you do multiphonics. And if you were doing multiphonics, chances are that you had a piano. so get to a piano. This is where pianos kind of come in, because you can plunk along with this and just kind of learn an awful lot about chords and stuff like that. Do really, really well by just looking at what you're doing on a keyboard. Okay? And we'll pick it up. We'll pick it up next week like this, and we'll start talking about chords, chord inversions, and then we might get into jazz chords. Okay? Thank you very much. Good night. I'll leave the mics open if you guys want to have a discussion.